Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, each year Missouri Southern's Department of Communication honors media professionals with the Regional Media Hall of Fame. Today we have an opportunity to visit with the 2012 people who are being honored by the Hall of Fame. Don Hicks with the Missouri Broadcasters Association and photojournalist Mike Gullett. Thank you both for being here today. And for background for our audience, the Hall of Fame honors people who have made an impact regionally on the media, and both of you are being honored in this way tonight. But people in the audience may not recognize you, a little bit of background. So I think when we talk about media, explain a little bit about your involvement with media. And Don, I'll start with you, what this means for you.
Well, I think I'll start with my immediate position, which is President and CEO of the Missouri Broadcasters Association, which I think, I'm involved in with all the radio and television stations in the state, and basically in three areas. One is a resource for staff and training and legal, paralegal work, things of that nature. Then we do lobbying, which all associations lobby. I'm a registered lobbyist, so we do the lobbying, make sure that our best interests are represented in those legislative and regulatory bodies that impact broadcasting. And then we also, through our own programs of recognition, serve to foster quality broadcasting.
And statewide throughout the state of Missouri.
Yes, right.
And when people hear the term photojournalist, how do you define this for people? And they ask, well, what do you do as a photojournalist?
You put pictures with words. And some people stereotype that as newspaper or magazine, but really it's anything you look at. The covers of CDs, everything is photojournalism. Mine has been newspaper mostly since I got out of school, and worked for magazines, newspapers, but was locally here at the Joplin Globe for 12 years, and before that over in Kansas, so spanning, well, it sounds weird to say a decade or so now, or two or whatever, but it's just, I like to say it's visually communicating life.
Capturing those moments for people through the eyes of that camera in your eyes. Well, your careers, both of you have had very distinguished careers in each of your fields, and people oftentimes they wonder, well, how did you get started? How did you reach the point where you're at now? And I know we have some videos that kind of show some pictures throughout your careers, but maybe Don, if you could talk a little bit about your Missouri Broadcasters Association now, but like everybody else, you've climbed a ladder, you've gone through those steps in your career.
Well, like a lot of people my age, when I got in broadcasting in the early 70s, a lot of people, it was mainly by accident, and I think that's true from a lot of people who are in their, as I say, my generation who are in the business, and I was actually. My career goals, my major in college was social psychology, and I was going to own and operate retirement homes, but I was working my way through college, and during that time I got a job at one of the local television stations as a part-time cameraman, and I just basically fell in love with the business and decided rather than to go into graduate school that I would stay with broadcasting, and this September that decision will be 42 years old.
So 42 years broadcasting is your life.
That's right. If I'm not careful, this may get to be a permanent job, as they say.
And I know when you talk about broadcasting, there's a lot of different things. People see TV and they see the people on camera, but they don't realize behind the scenes. And you had a lot of work with that sales and management behind the scenes.
Yeah, I never did anything in front of camera work. All my work is starting out as a cameraman and then moving on into sales and then into sales management, and then into station management. It was all on the other side of the camera. But there are a lot of people and a lot of jobs. It takes a lot of different people doing a lot of different things in order to keep a station on the air. And of course, it's been a significant changes as it has in all businesses during all these years. So it's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed it, and I have never once regretted my decision.
Now, Mike, I understand you had a love of photography from a very early age, which has then developed into a career.
Yeah, I did. I didn't realize it, but I was the president of my 5th grade camera club. We had a wonderful, Mrs. Smith was my 5th grade teacher, and she set up in our little closet in every little grade school classroom. There's a closet with a sink, and she set up a little dark room, and so I started there, and then it just kind of, I always had a camera but never thought of doing it as a vocation or for my career. So I got out of school, high school, and went to college and didn't really know coach or accounting, and nothing really excited me. But so I got through with my associates and thought, well, what do I do now? And there was a night photo class offered at the Labette Community College, and I took it, and it was like the light bulb came on. It like rekindled. It had gone out for all those years since 5th grade, and it came on, and my teacher there encouraged me, and so I went on to the University of Kansas, not really thinking I wanted to be a photojournalist. But going to William Allen White School of Journalism, I say I was brainwashed, but I think I was influenced and directed into something because I love people, I love sports, and this was a way that I could do both, see people, meet new people every day, get into their life, and then actually be around the sporting area. And so I got out of school, started working in February after I got in December, and have been doing this for the last 35 years or so, not full-time now, but for years. And students will ask me, well, what would you change? And I say nothing. I've got to do something I loved every day, and very few people are that privileged.
And that's something that makes a key to success no matter what your profession. You like what both of you like what you're doing, and tying those together. And Mike, we have some pictures we're running on the screen showing some of your work, and people seeing through your eyes and your camera, capturing those moments that they now see it differently perhaps sometimes. You know, oh wow, I didn't realize the beauty in that sky, for instance.
That's the challenge. I tell students, we look at things and make it different so that when people going to and from work wouldn't have seen it, and they go by and go, wow, I drove by there, I didn't notice that. And it's the way we try to look at the world, and so you only have a few seconds to capture the interest of a reader. So we can look at it or show it so they can look at it and go, wow, that's interesting. Just any emotion you can evoke from your audience means that you've been successful in conveying the communication.
That communication being an important part of it. Don, you mentioned changes, and both of you, I know I've seen a lot of changes in your field. Broadcasting as well, you mentioned the early 70s, there's just the size of stations, the whole scope of the business has gone through major changes in the last 34 years.
Well, actually, in regards to three areas in broadcasting, we've seen first, the thing that most people think about is the technology.
Right.
Of course, there have been dramatic changes in the technology, you know, compared to the, you know, today when everything is done digitally, and when I started, you had the flat top, and videotape was 2 inches wide, and so cameras were, you know, as big as a truck bed. I mean, you know, they were
portable equipment that time.
You
were wearing 80 pounds of gear.
And so certainly the technology and what we're able to do, and what that's done to improve what the viewer sees and what the listener hears in terms of radio. You know, computerization, which led ultimately to the digital revolution. I think also, but what people don't see so much, that it's also changed and altered broadcasting, as it changes and alters a lot of businesses, is the legal and regulatory environment is certainly different today than it was, and I think finally is ownership. I think we've moved more and more from, and not so much in smaller market radio, but in terms of medium market radio and certainly in television, where, you know, we've moved from local ownership to a you know, more corporate ownership.
Corporate with many different places.
Exactly, and that's put some, that always brings in some cases brings in some stock market pressures that can impact the day-to-day operation of stations, and so the you know, we have found that as that consolidation has occurred, it's put more pressure on our association to provide a broader based offering of services to our members, and whereas we could do a much more narrow but a lot more deeply in one area. One area that has really absolutely taken off as a service that we provide is just our legal and regulatory work. That has gone from a very insignificant amount of money to a very significant amount of money in the last 5 or 6 years.
People who are watching, they realize that broadcast stations are licensed by the Federal
Right.
Communication Commission. They make the rules that broadcast stations have to adapt to,
Right.
and you have to have somebody work in your position helping the stations understand what's coming down the road
That's exactly right.
and tying that together. Well, technology, I'm sure, you started off with film cameras, I'm sure.
Oh, yes,
And now,
yes.
how have you seen technology impacting how you're able to do things as a photojournalist?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, film, black and white film, and I got in on the single lens reflex, so I wasn't carrying around a big, press camera or something they'd used before. But we went from black and white for years, then we started color. Everybody, because USA Today came along, and we all thought, yeah, but
Every
they
paper had to
stayed,
have color.
and we had to have color. So then we had to shoot color and then scan the film, and then we went to the electronic or digital darkroom where we still did the film, but we scanned the images in. And then when the digital camera come around and was to the point of where we could be usable and was at that quality, which was probably about late 90s or right around 2000 in there, then we switched to digital. And really, photojournalists, I think, was the prime reason that they were working to researching that, because immediacy is so important. Used to be we would work an event and we would have to run our film back. If I was working for the Associated Press, we'd run it back. They'd have to do the film, then they'd have to make a print, and they'd have to scan it onto the old drum and get it out on the wire. So that was a minimum a half hour. With digital, 3 to 5 minutes, they could have pictures out on the wire of an event. So changed a lot, and really it's helped photojournalism, but I think it's not been that great for photography, because shooting digital, you don't take the time, you have to know photography and know you have the image. With film, you had to do that. With digital, you can chimp and look, and everybody gets into that, where that immediate gratification is there. You can see what you've done, and in a lot of ways it's good, but I do miss the talent it took for photographers with film to be able to know you had something, or be good enough to be confident and be able to come back with that image.
I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I told them no story, and they didn't get it because they never had dealt with the old cameras. They'd always only had digital. And I can't remember who it was, but there was the famous photographers. They asked him what the secret to great photography was, and he said F8 and be there. Well, most they said don't know what F8 means.
Oh yeah. Well, and I make sure students know that. That's manual camera. It's not set it on A. Yeah, it's knowing what they're doing, and we still teach with film to make sure they understand photography. Then we move to digital because that's the medium now.
So do you find that perhaps young aspiring photographers, they have those cameras that come with auto, they've kind of light flashes in their mind, and they say, well, I can change the settings and it looks a little different,
Well, and the ones that we teach, we want to make sure because the people in the industry, the photographers and my colleagues out there said, don't send us a bunch of Photoshop digital wannabes, I call them Photoshopographers. I shouldn't say that, but it's like, just get an image and I can fix it in Photoshop. But photography is making that image through the camera when you see it, and having that image that you can just do the little things you could do in the darkroom, and then have that image that communicates what you want to communicate.
And so understanding all that behind the scenes, like you said, f-stops and speeds and things.
Mandatory, I think, for a good photographer.
To understand that.
Anybody can be a point and shoot photographer.
And broadcasting, as far as station management as well, I imagine that there's still a lot of basics people need to understand. You're dealing with sales, you're dealing with some of the basics operation of a business for many people.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the day-to-day operation, once it is a business, and I think that sometimes that's not as remembered in Washington and regulatory circles as it should be, but it is definitely a business. We have to turn a profit. We have to appeal to our audiences, and there's a lot of work and effort goes into that. And basically, we end up, in a commercial entity, and even in a non-commercial entity, you basically serve two customer bases. You serve customer, the viewer, customer, the listener, and then you also serve customer who buys the advertising. And of course, in the case of the non-commercial station, that relates to the person who buys the underwriting.
Right.
So, you still have that dual customer appeal, and it's axiomatic that the commercial entity is only interested in you to the degree that you do a good job with customer, the viewer, customer, the listener. The better job you do.
Those people need numbers.
Exactly. The better job you do there, the better you're going to do over here, and so that doesn't change. But I think what sometimes those of us who've been in the business for a while, and I think I have to point this out sometimes when I talk to students, is that our business is still magic. I mean, it still has that magic to it, and that makes it compelling. And I think that, to me, has always been the key word, is that the product that you put out there has to be compelling. And particularly today, when you figure, when I started, you basically had 2.5 networks. ABC was not a full network. But it, very soon after that became a full network. And of course, there was no cable. Everything was over the air. And today, you have 500 channel systems. You've got the internet. You have a lot more competition. So being compelling and being local is much more significant today than it was even 10 years ago.
Now that local aspect, of course, Missouri broadcasters, you're dealing with local broadcasters. People have those choices to watch national network news or some of the internet things, but you still stress that you are tying to the local communities of license.
Right. I was fortunate years ago, right when the internet was first blossoming. I went to a seminar that was put on by Microsoft out in San Jose, California, and everybody was talking about, the World Wide Web, www, www this, www that, and I said at the time, you need to really forget www. All that is an address point. What you really need to think about when you start talking about programming this is LLL, local, because what people are interested in is what goes on locally in their community.
So that affects their lives.
That's exactly. That's where the impact from their life takes place.
Well, Mike, I know you deal with a lot of local photography, and the pictures we saw, some of that were going by, capturing what's happening here in this region. You're touching people here that pick up the paper or read those, see those AP stories through your capturing of those moments.
Yeah, I don't do it as much as I used to since I started teaching, but I still do. And the recent tornado has been one way that I was really spent a lot of time this last year, and in fact I'm documenting the year in Joplin and now the regrowth of Joplin, and the progress is being made because it severely affected our community. Everyone was impacted, and being able to visually communicate that, and it was locally, we knew it, but then actually globally was interesting because I had someone say, well, don't you feel like you're taking advantage of those people by photographing them? I said, not at all. I'm telling their story, and if the story isn't told, you won't have hundreds of thousands of volunteers which came to Joplin and continue to come to Joplin.
Absolutely.
So that's what in the media, if we can communicate the life around us locally and then let that and impact the local people, but also sometimes statewide, even nationally or internationally, then that's what we've done our job, I think, because they need to know what's going on.
And you mentioned the tornado award-winning photography. Did you have feedback from some people overseas that they knew you, or they knew that you're the one that took that picture I've seen on the
Well, it was interesting. I had students that are international students that I'd taught, and then other people that had gone to the two universities, Missouri Southern and Pittsburgh State, that sent me. They said, well, "That's my teacher," or "That's
you took that picture.
Yeah, and I had people that just would email me a copy of it. It was in the Istanbul paper in Turkey, and So it did go international, and because it was a significant event that affected not only us but really globally, and so it was, it's nice to know that there's people still reading newspapers, which they do, and they always will in some form. We just had to adjust to the internet and things, which really gives us more opportunity for immediacy, things like that.
You find the internet opening up some opportunities to maybe show more of your photography because you're not limited to one picture per page.
That's right. I mean, we can shoot a picture and it's one picture in the newspaper, and then they say go see the gallery, and we have 12 or 15 or 20 pictures from the event there. So it does give us more play, and it gives the community more opportunity to see that. Then, oh, there was that one picture, well, but there was a lot of pictures taken there, and then they get to see those now, which they used to just see the one.
I imagine it was a challenge as a photographer to say, I've been at this event, a lot of great things happened. Which one picture do I choose?
Very difficult, because you're influenced by being there and taking the pictures, the people you talk to, but you try to get that one image. We had to choose that really went with the story, and then that was the writing, and then it told the complete package or the complete story.
So now you can kind of show them what else was happening.
Yes, that's really nice. And then you get a lot of play just instead of just in newspapers around the world, all the internet sites and all the news internet sites would use those pictures.
One question, how do you deal with copyright on that?
And once it hits the internet, how do you work with
Well,
it?
most of my pictures are distributed through the Associated Press, and I waive all copyright to it, because part of media is sharing. Sharing with others. So, yes, we can put a copyright on it and say, if you use it, you got to pay Mike. Well, that's why we get to use pictures from Afghanistan or France or wherever, because of that sharing through the media. And so it's that sharing that informs, and so I don't even worry about that. It's a big issue, but I let the Associated Press or whoever I work for take care of that.
Right. Well, as we're recording this program, of course, we're in the studios at Missouri Southern State University with KGCS, and we have students here. There are students at the university. If either one of you had an opportunity to share something to the broadcasters of tomorrow, for instance, Don, if we don't have a class here to lecture or talk to, but what kind of tips or advice would you give to someone who is thinking, I want to go into the field of broadcasting?
Well, I think first off is flexibility, because, just like in any business, what you see today is it's going to change, and it's going to morph. So understand that change is going to happen. We're involved, as we've just been discussing here, both with photography and with broadcasting. We're involved in a sea change at this point, and all change brings elements of danger, but it also brings, and peril, but it also brings opportunity. And so look for opportunities. And one of the things, if you're a young student, and even any young person, no matter what your endeavor, whatever you're thinking about pursuing media or whatever, I always think, you have to have goals, because if you don't have goals and you don't have some vision of where you want to be in the future, you will not recognize your opportunities as opportunities, and they'll pass you by. Everyone gets opportunities, but the difference between those who succeed and those who fail is the successful person recognizes that there are opportunities because they had goals. And those who are less successful don't recognize their opportunities because they did not.
And so being aware of the field they're entering and learning as much as you can about the field,
absolutely.
being aware of those changes and those opportunities. Mike, you've talked a little bit about working with students, but if someone, says, I would love to do what you do, be able to go out and take pictures at those sporting events, and what kind of advice do you give for aspiring students in that field?
Well, it's a lot, what was just mentioned, flexibility, but versatility. Being versatile, learn as many things as you can, not only be a visual communicator, but be able to write well, be able to speak well, be able to design well. Because the day when I graduated, if I could make good photos with a film camera, then I got hired at the newspaper. Well, you have to know more than that now. You have to be able to do more things, because more is asked, and that's not just in our fields, but in many areas. So just use that education to learn as many different types of communications they can, so that when they do get hired, maybe not as a photographer, but whatever their other way of communicating, they can move towards what they love, if it is photography.
So getting that experience in many different areas that so many things tie together. You're taking pictures not only for a newspaper but for the internet, and sometimes you'll have to write that story to go with it, and there's a lot of things.
Well, they can send you out to do it instead of two people,
Right.
if you can write and shoot. So
Getting back to the economics of
Yeah,
running that
that's
business
right.
and
Yep.
tying things together. Well, both of you have had a very long, successful careers. What do you enjoy the most? Someone would say, well, you've been committed to the field for a long time. What is the most enjoyable part of working in broadcasting?
For me, it's service to the community, because if you take a look at either through the photos or whatever, through the microphone, through your voice, in radio or voice and image on television, it's all about emotion. Mm-hmm. And anytime you can trigger positive change, and we were talking about the photos and the impact this has had on the relief here for Joplin after the terrible tornado, but you see that time and time again, and what triggers that is the emotion that is inherent in media. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes we get too involved in the mechanics, and we lose sight of the fact that whether you're shooting with film or digital, or whether you're shooting with a camera that you would take a winch truck to lift, or whether you're shooting with a thing the size of your hand, that's not important. What's important is that you convey the message through that media, whatever you're using, through that microphone or whatever, and that you trigger the desired emotion to get the result that you want.
Mm-hmm. Mike, same question for you. What your enjoyment of the work? What do you feel that?
Well, I agree. It's informing the public, and you almost feel like a public servant, because we do it because we enjoy it and we love it, and we want to, hopefully influence in a positive way. We don't ever do it for the money. We all know that. But I enjoy meeting people. I think that's it. They open their lives up to me, and then that, and tell their story, and then getting to do things I would not have ever gotten to do. I got to go to World Series and got paid to do it, and my friend who I graduated with was there next to me, and we're probably 2 years out of college, and he looked at me and says, "You mean they pay us to do this?" And so things like that I've got to do that would not have been possible had I not been a photojournalist.
A lot of opportunities for people in the fields, photojournalism and broadcasting, and I'd like to congratulate both of you once again, I guess I said, on your award that you're receiving from the Regional Media Hall of Fame, and thank you for your careers and as you influence the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And I'd like to thank our viewers this week for joining us. My name is Judy Stiles. I hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.